yes, the Bahrain Grand Prix has just been completed. And wow, that was a good race, that, wasn't it? That was a spectacular race. A lot of argy-bargy and pushy-shovey at the start, at the early laps. Quite a bit of contact going off here and there, but makes a change to see that, actually. It was a nice surprise. Certain teams coming off worse, and of course a disaster for Red Bull this weekend. We'll get down to them at the end of the crawl wall, of course. But to kick things off, Sebastian Vettel, the race winner, would you believe? Qualified on pole. It looked like Mercedes were dominating this season after Melbourne, but yeah, I've been made to eat my words on many times this race weekend, so yeah. Oh well, it's for good reasons, but there you go. So Sebastian Vettel, race winner, held on at the end to defeat Valtteri Bottas, a strong charging Bottas on the medium tyres. Vettel's initial plan was, of course, a double stop, but spreaded it out to a one stop after Valtteri Bottas put on the medium compound tyre and held off. Bottas was in DRS range within the last lap, but just managed to keep him clean. A perfect weekend from Sebastian Vettel. Maybe the strategy wasn't the best, but he did a good job to keep that win. So for that reason, Sebastian Vettel qualified pole, won the race, and it was an exciting race. So for that reason, I'm going to award you 10 points on the crawl wall. There you go, your first top 10 points there. A faultless weekend, really. Can't say anything other than that, can you? Pole and win, you've nailed it. Next up was Valtteri Bottas, hard charging, qualified P3 outs, qualifying Hamilton before the gearbox penalty as well, it's worth noting, but lost out to Kimi Raikkonen, and Ferrari had a good pace this weekend, a surprising amount of pace as well, it must be said. But yeah, Bottas did a brilliant strategy for Mercedes, of course, caught up but couldn't quite overtake. Looked out of the measure of his teammate, obviously, in qualifying. In the race, it was difficult to determine because Hamilton was working his way through from P9. So it looked like Hamilton did have the pace, but he was crying a bit on the radio, wasn't he? Anyway, Valtteri Bottas, a solid weekend, and I think he's firmly put himself back in the role of he does deserve to be at Mercedes after that performance. Melbourne raised a lot of question marks, of course. But I think it's not a 10, of course, it's not a perfect 10, but it's certainly going to be a solid 8 points, and yeah, I think that puts him back on 0 now, scoring Palmer of the Week last week, of course. Next up was Lewis Hamilton, and qualified P4, so behind his teammate, behind both Ferraris, and then had a 5-place gearbox penalty. Initially slipped back off the start after making ground and dropping down to 11th, I think it was at one point, and then just after the virtual safety car for Ricciardo's parked car, he did manage to do an amazing triple overtake, regardless whether it's the fastest car and regardless of DRS, he still overtook Force India, Toro Rosso and McLaren, I believe it was, so yeah, just pissed past them as it was, so to speak. And yeah, did a good job to do that, but then he just stayed third and then was just crying and moaning on the radio, saying, I don't know what my pace is, I don't know what you want me to do, and all they kept telling him would do low 34s and tell us what mode you are in to be able to do that. You know, I understood it, and I'm not a racing driver. What mode are you in your car to be able to do low 34s? Fairly straightforward in my eyes, but apparently Hamilton couldn't do it. It pretty much threw in the towel, you could see it. Bottas was gaining on Vettel, but Hamilton wasn't making any headway until the last lap where he managed to gain about 5 seconds or whatever it was. So it's just stupid. He should have just put his foot down and gone for it, but instead he just threw in the towel, I think. So Lewis Hamilton, you know, need to put your ideas up really, because if you just spend more effort and time not whinging and just getting on with the job in hand, you could have been P2 and you could have even won the race today, but that's my personal opinion on the matter. So for Lewis Hamilton, I'm going to say a good recovery, you know, but a disappointing qualifying in Mercedes terms, it was, you can't deny that. And then a good race up to P3, and then a shit race to not gain on Bottas and Vettel. That's my personal opinion, so for that reason, it's only going to be 5 points. People that say I'm a Hamilton fanboy, yeah. I just reward them completely unbiasedly, and that is a result of that. So there we go. 5 points for Lewis Hamilton. I wasn't impressed. Pierre Gasly, here we go. I meant to eat my words once again, Anna. I said that Honda would be firmly at the back of the grid this year, and maybe next year they can develop because the Toro Rosso and Honda partnership looks strong. And there's proof of it. Pierre Gasly P4. Who saw that coming at the start of the weekend? They were rapid. Did really, really well. Brendan Hartley was unfortunate, it must be said, but didn't have the pace of Pierre Gasly at all. But could have still scored points today had it not been for a penalty. But Pierre Gasly, wow. Amazing. Got into Q3, qualified P6, started P5, and finished P4. So he was going up and up and up. That was a brilliant race weekend by Pierre Gasly and by Toro Rosso Honda. Amazing to see that the team were loving it as well, hugging and kissing each other like all good Italians do. And Pierre Gasly, you're another full 10-pointer. That was an amazing race. Well done, Pierre Gasly. 10 points for you. Not looking so cruel again, this cruel wall, is it? But we'll get there. Next up was Kevin Magnussen, P5, finally scoring points for Haas, and Haas finally getting their pit stop sorted out, it seems. A strong race, and did a solid job. Qualified inside the top 10, and of course finished P5, so great effort by Kevin Magnussen. I don't like to say it, but you know, he was outraced by a Toro Rosso Honda today, so for that reason he can't get the full 10 points that he did at Australia. That was mainly sympathy points, but nonetheless, still a solid drive by K-Mag, really impressive. And yeah, I'm going to award him 8 points. 8 points for K-Mag because he did have a bit of bickering with his teammate. Fair enough, it was more to do with Grosjean's fault, but just get on with it. I don't like complaining. I don't see complaining as part of the sport. Next up was Nico Hulkenberg, a solid job in P6 for Renault once again. He's just missed a consistency, isn't he? And we wonder why he's not got a podium yet. It is a real shame that he hasn't scored a podium yet. His opportunities have been there, but then gone begging. But nonetheless, a solid weekend for Nico Hulkenberg. More points on the board for Renault. I'd like to see him a bit more up there, I've got to be honest. I'm hoping that will come towards the end of this season, hopefully halfway and beyond, maybe from the summer break onwards, that they'll bring quite a lot of updates in, but we'll wait and see. Nico Hulkenberg, a solid enough race, but just nothing special. He's just there, he's picking up the points, good stuff, but you know, doesn't really get much telly time because of it. But for that reason, I'm going to award Nico Hulkenberg 7 points. I just think Renault could do more, and I just think, you know, Hulkenberg's just there thinking, well, I can take the points. Maybe he should just get stuck in a little bit more. Next up was Fernando Alonso. A solid drive once again. Qualified P13 and P14, the McLarens, and they finished behind each other today, 7th and 8th. So we'll score them together, shall we? Yeah, didn't look to have the pace in qualifying, but they got the strategy right again and benefited once again. So similar to Melbourne, really. And for that reason, I think that I'm going to score Fernando Alonso 7 points. And Stoffel Vandoorne was looking like he was going to finish behind Marcus Ericsson for a while there. So for that reason, I'm going to award Vandoorne another 6 points, but another double points finish for McLaren. So looks like they've got egg on the face because McLaren have departed from Honda, and Toro Rosso Honda have now got a 4th place finish. But in the grand scheme of things, it's another solid double points finish for McLaren, and they've not done that for the past couple of seasons, especially 2 races in a row. So hoping that form continues, but again, just progress a little bit more. Next up, another one where I'm meant to eat my words. It's Marcus Ericsson, and on his 50th race of not scoring any points, he finally scores some points with P9 and 2 points for Sauber, which is an amazing achievement. The car, I've got to be honest, I would say it would have scored points at some point this season, but I wouldn't have said it was with Ericsson, and I wouldn't have said it was this early into the season, shall we say. So once again, I've got egg on my face. I know nothing about this sport, clearly. But Marcus Ericsson, a solid race weekend, and you delivered this weekend. Unfortunate not to get through to Q2 once again. Just a slight error, I believe. But I think it's going to happen, you know. This Sauber team are doing well now. Good to see. Was faster than Leclerc in qualifying, and indeed the race, all race weekend. Leclerc couldn't manage a one-stop, which is why he slipped down, but Ericsson did, and he delivered well. So for that reason, Marcus Ericsson, I'm going to award you some bonus points. Bonus points are on the board, and it's going to be 11. I'm going to score you 11 points, Ericsson, because those 2 points could be crucial for Sauber later on this season, especially with certain teams looking fairly dismal. The last of the point scorers was Esteban Ocon. So, a point for Force India at last. And yeah, I just don't know really. I mean, he did okay, but I think he looked into it with such as, I mean, you know, fair enough, so did Ericsson, but I think Force India were more lucky today to pick up the points than the other teams around them. Having a double Red Bull retirement, of course a Raikkonen retirement, and the late pit stop by Grosjean. That was the one that climbed Ocon into the points. He did have to get past Sainz though, which is worth noting. And of course, for Lars in the comment section of the Team Krull Wall, Force India are my favourite team. Would I wear a pink t-shirt? Well, here we go. I would. So there you go. That's why the pink t-shirt's here anyway. So yeah, Esteban Ocon, a solid enough race. I'm going to award him 8 points because he scored a point for Force India, which is of course crucial to them, and hopefully they can build on that for the future races. Next up was Carlos Sainz, outshone by Hulkenberg in qualifying and the race by quite some margin. 8 points for Hulkenberg, no points for Sainz. So he so far only has 1 point on his board this season in the Drivers' Championship. So he'll be looking to improve. Yeah, I'm just going to award him 4. I think he's slipped back a bit. So unfortunate race by Sainz. Could be tyres that have gone off the cliff. Maybe a bit of strategy involved, but I think he should have finished ahead of a Sauber and a Force India at least. You know, Hulkenberg did. So there we go. Next up was Sergio Perez, finished P12, almost got pipped by Hartley over the line, Brendan Hartley, in the Toro Rosso of course, but did almost have a stab at scoring the points as well, so it was quite a little big gaggle there between 10th to 13th, but Sergio Perez finishing 12th in that order. So not too bad a race, of course outshone by Ocon, now that he scored the first point of the season for Force India. But nonetheless, a strongish showing. I'm going to award him 6 points again for Sergio Perez because I felt it was a strong enough race. But yeah, just unfortunate he didn't pick the points up really. Hopefully they can keep building on this though, like I keep saying. Next up, after Sergio Perez, was of course Brendan Hartley. I personally don't believe that he should have had the penalty, the 10-second time penalty for hitting and taking off Perez. I mean, that's worth noting for Perez as well, I did forget about that. Ever the serious Krull Wall. But yeah, I mean, Brendan Hartley, I personally don't think he deserved 10 seconds. Maybe 5, maybe, but certainly not a 10-second stop-go penalty. Of course, it gets added to the pit stop time. So for Brendan Hartley, it was an unfortunate race. That is what cost him points today. Without fail, it's what cost him points because he would have been ahead of Ericsson had that not been the case. So for Brendan Hartley, I'm going to award him 6. Admittedly, he was out-qualified by his teammate. He didn't get through to Q3 like his teammate, but I felt that points were there this weekend and I thought the FIA were a bit harsh on him with the 10-second time penalty. Also, it's worth noting at the time of recording, which we haven't got the results in fully yet, but both Sergio Perez and Brendan Hartley are under investigation for something to do with not staying in formation during the formation lap. We haven't got a result as of yet, so that could maybe cost those drivers positions, but they didn't score the points, so it's not going to be too crucial. Next up was Charles Leclerc, or as David Croft says, Charles Leclerc. So, for Charles Leclerc, it's a poor race, I'm going to say. I'm certainly disappointed by his result, especially considering Ericsson was up there in P9 today. Made a mistake in qualifying, which potentially cost him Q2. We've only got his word for that. He spun at the last corner, but I think it was certainly an improving lap. And it was unfortunate. For that reason, though, I mean, he had a poor race, was battling with the Williams at one stage, only finished ahead of Grosjean and the 2 Williams. Grosjean had an extra pit stop. So, yeah, disappointing race by Leclerc, especially considering he's been there before. So I'm going to score him 4 points. It's a sympathetic 4 points, but, you know, he needs to book his ideas up, really. I was expecting a bit more from him this weekend, considering he has raced around here before. Next up, Romain Grosjean, qualified 16th, missed out in getting in through to Q2 and Q3. Disappointing to say the least. And then in the race it looked like he was going to score points, and then he lost part of his car. I mean, I've seen less bits fall off of a robot in Robot Wars, to be honest with you, but yeah, it was shedding bits along that start-finish straight more often than not, wasn't it? So there was some damage there, and maybe that caused him to wear his tyres out more. Maybe it affected his aero, and that's what cost him the lack of pace. But nonetheless, he was the only driver to do 3 pit stops today, and it was costly, finishing down in 15th position and outshone by Kevin Magnussen, who scored points for Haas for the first time this year. So, Grosjean, I'm going to score you a middle-of-the-road 5, because I feel that the damage to the car could have cost you potential points, and you'd have not had to do that extra pit stop, was it for that reason. He did get a bit physical with Magnussen as well, it was worth saying, but just racing, get on with it. Last but not least of the finishers are the 2 Williams boys. Lance Stroll finishing ahead of Sergei Sorokin, and I'm not even going to bother talking about him. It's just going to be 0 and 0 for Stroll and Sorokin, because disappointing to say the least by the pair of them. Not interested. Not interested at all. Shit team. Williams aren't a shit team, but the drivers are shit, and I don't think the car's probably capable of points anyway, but they certainly deserve to be where Force India are and around. But stick Verline in that car and watch it go, but with them pieces of shite in it, not going anywhere. So the retirements we come to now. Kimi Raikkonen was the last of the retirements, of course. Only 3 retirements, and it was 3 big drivers, 3 big names gone out. So Kimi Raikkonen, as a result of a pit stop blunder by Ferrari, he was on for a podium for definite, but I mean, the big talking point there is, of course, the mechanic. We wish him well. It's just been stated before I managed to come up here that the mechanic has broken his leg. So we wish him all the best, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Of course, that's not anything we like to see in Formula 1. And yeah, it was a shame that it had to happen like that, and another pit stop blunder in Formula 1, which is strange, you know, if that's 3 now. But yeah, the main concern, of course, is the mechanic. So for that reason, Kimi Raikkonen, you retired. It was going to be a potential podium, but for non-finishers like this, it's just going to have to be a middle-of-the-road 5, because we don't know whether Hamilton would have got you, whether he'd have been able to repass Hamilton, whether he'd have got past Valtteri Bottas again, whether they'd have maybe pitted Vettel had your pace been quick. We don't know. So for that reason, it's a middle-of-the-road 5. And it's going to have to be the same for Max Verstappen. I'm going to score Verstappen 4. Because I just think his overtake was a bit too robust on Hamilton, which led to the damage. More often than not, though, a little impact like that doesn't result in a puncture and ruining your diff, but just today it did, and it was unfortunate for that. It was making a strong recovery back through the field while Hamilton was struggling, tried to capitalise on it a bit too early, made the overtake, and then just ran a bit wide and just touched him. And yeah, unfortunate. It wasn't Hamilton's fault, it was more Verstappen's fault for just trying to squeeze him out, but I could understand why he wanted to get past that Mercedes so quick, of course, with that Mercedes being so rapid. So, only 4 points, but that is because had he not had the contact, he'd have probably finished quite high up this weekend, but I'm not blaming him for what he did. And of course, Daniel Ricciardo, 5 points for him. Would he have been up there in that battle for the potential win, potential podium? I think he would have been, but a complete electricals failure resulted in him being out at the end of 1.5 laps, which is a great disappointment. So, that's the screw all finished. Now it's time to get the special guest. Shall we go get him, everyone? It's Jolyon Palmer once again. Just give me a second, I'll go get him. Jolyon! Jolyon! Where are you? Come on, Jolyon. Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Jolyon Palmer with us. Ha! You thought it was me going to be coming on, didn't you? But no, it isn't. Here he comes. It's Jolyon Palmer to award Palmer of the Week. Oh, thank you very much, Jolyon. Thanks for coming on. There he goes. That was Jolyon Palmer there, and he has awarded Lewis Hamilton Palmer of the Week. I can only imagine that's because he was crying like a little bitch on the radio, but there we go. So that's minus 10 points for Lewis Hamilton. So a bad start for Mercedes with Palmers of the Week. Need to put their ideas up, I feel. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, Be sure to like, comment and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on the scores that I've given in the comment section below. And thanks a lot for watching, guys, and much love. Right, hiya guys, and welcome back to the F1 Power Rankings. No, wait, that's not right, is it?